All right, so let's actually go to the Democratic primary. As we said, there's a very strange thing happening in the state of New Hampshire. We've gotten a little bit of inklings, Ryan, about the Biden campaign getting worried about this. Now they're telling people to go and write in Biden, even though they're like, oh, we don't actually care, but now we do care. So they're panicking a little bit. And one of the instances you could know this is that there are now robocalls with deepfakes of Biden's voice, actually telling people across the state to not vote tomorrow because it's important that you save your vote for the November election. Pretty sure it doesn't work that way, but let's take a listen. And again, this is going out to a lot of people in New Hampshire. Let's take a listen to this.
We know the value of voting Democratic when our votes count. It's important that you save your vote for the November election. We'll need your help in electing Democrats up and down the ticket. Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again. Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday.
So it's a deep fake Biden telling people not to vote for Biden.
What do you make of this? So obviously, these are all these dark money groups. You never know who's actually behind this stuff. I mean, I'm not going to say it's connected to the DNC or whatever, but clearly someone on behalf of Biden is putting this out for a reason. They don't want people to come out to vote.
Why would somebody on behalf of Biden, though, want him not to vote so that they can say, well, we didn't lose because we didn't try?
Yeah, something like that. I think they just want him, or maybe you're right. Maybe it's what do you think it's an anti-Biden?
It's Marianne.
Oh, right.
I think that was actually Marianne's voice. She was impersonating Biden.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just one of those
where was Dean Phillips last night?
So, I mean, already, though, this is getting attention. The New Hampshire Attorney General is actually investigating whether this is a voter suppression.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is.
There's First Amendment carve-out when it comes to election, like deliberate misinformation around, like you're not allowed to say voting day is Monday.
Right, exactly.
When it's actually Tuesday, unless you can prove to a jury that you really are an idiot and didn't know. But like that's illegal. Like what you just heard, deep faking the president's voice and telling them not to vote. Also, it should be illegal to make so little sense. Yeah, like it's a crime against logic.
Yeah,
you can vote in both the primary and the general. Like
obviously, people do it all the time.
That is quite legal.
Here's what's a little weird, Ryan. The message has a phone number at the end that belongs to the former Democratic chair of the New Hampshire primary, who now runs a super PAC, which is supporting the New Hampshire write-in campaign for Biden. So
that's probably somebody like planting drugs on somebody, right?
All right.
Yeah, I think that's trying to point fingers.
So according to her, she says in an interview that she began receiving Sunday evening calls for people who had received the message. She says that she had called her. She was not a Biden supporter. She says that they had nothing to do with it. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but we can track it and we can just say something is happening. There's definitely a voter suppression effort which is going on in the state. Let's put this up there as well, which just shows you a little bit of his panic. This is from the New York Times, and again, I want to get some of your analysis. They say that while they are, they don't care necessarily about the New Hampshire ballot because they're not on it after moving the primary to South Carolina, that, quote, they're still hoping that he will win. And by doing that, they're actually spending a decent amount of money on the write-in. So I'm curious what you think of this. What is this something that's coming back to bite them? Are they actually panicking? You covered a lot in terms of the way they rigged the Democratic primary. Maybe give people some background on that, too.
And the background around this particular fight is that Biden wanted to basically reward South Carolina, for making him president, by making South Carolina the first primary. They also punished Iowa, got rid of the Iowa caucuses after that.
That one's fair. This one's not.
Yeah, come on. And also, Iowa was helpful to Democrats because it was a swing state for so long.
Right.
Not a swing state anymore. We used to say that elections started in Iowa and finished in Florida. Not true anymore. Both are red states at this point. And so Iowa's gone. New Hampshire then always first in the nation primary. And they would say, look, it's right in our Constitution. They love telling people that their Constitution says they have to be the first primary. And the DNC is like, we don't really care what your Constitution says. Like, we can set the primary. And we're making the first one South Carolina. New Hampshire said, screw you, we're holding one anyway. And so Biden was like, well, then I'm not going to be on the ballot. Like, we're not going to sanction this. We're not going to participate in it.
Right.
But it's so ingrained in people's minds that if you even travel to New Hampshire to this day, even though it's not a sanctioned primary, let's say 6 months ago, a Democrat traveled to New Hampshire. Oh, look at that. Gavin Newsom going to New Hampshire. Maybe he wants to be president.
Right.
So the mythology around it is still like locked into people's minds. And so as it gets closer, And as Biden's numbers continue to plummet, they reckoned that they just simply could not withstand getting annihilated in a state like New Hampshire that has this mythology around it. So now, right, you've got these Biden allies who are like, we can't have this. We need to write Biden in, and then if we can, write in with Biden, if we can get that going, then we can show that that the grassroots support is really there for him. It was New Hampshire that knocked LBJ out.
Yes, that's right. I mean, there's a lot of mythology around New Hampshire. You can go both ways, right? So New Hampshire is what saved the Bill Clinton campaign back in '92. New Hampshire is really the first state that Donald Trump ever won, so the two of them have a lot of affinity for that. Iowa, that's like an Obama state. That's where Obama was able to launch 2008, but he ended up losing New Hampshire. So there's a lot of things that we can...
famously crying in the diner.
There was also the Tabasco thing. Am I forgetting?
Was that right around the same time?
I think it was around the same time. I'll never forget that moment. But let's get and think about some of the closing pitches. So as we already predicted, I think Dean is going to actually do a little bit better than a lot of people are expecting, just because his name is literally on the ballot. And Dean gave his final closing argument in a video that was posted yesterday to New Hampshire voters. Let's take a listen.
Well, tomorrow's the big day, January 23rd, the first in the nation primary right here in the Granite State. I've spent the better part of the last 3 months with so many of you, Democrats, independents, Republicans, libertarians, and I just want to say thank you. It's been a remarkable experience. I know how to do this. I'm the second most bipartisan member of the entire U.S. Congress. I came from the business world, where you could never succeed by demeaning, endangering half of your customers. You actually do the opposite. You invite people, you listen to them, you learn them, you welcome them. That's what I'm going to do as president. We're going to solve these problems by working together. And I'm going to take what I learned here and spread it all around the world. The way you practice democracy, what you've shared with me, and most of all, how we're going to fix it. So if you're ready for change, I'm ready to be your president.
Just an uber normal pitch there. I mean, in a sane world, I think something like that would have worked. But the thing is, Ryan, I mean, we covered this before. MSNBC literally refused to have this man on. He still has not done an interview on the network. And the reason why is MSNBC knows that the Democrats actually trust the media. They are. I've seen a few things. The Financial Times had a piece on him, the Wall Street Journal as well. Let's be real. Like, that's not going to make any difference. Like, it's all about television, and it's all just, especially for a lot of these boomers. The world that they're living in is one where, and if it's not on linear TV, it doesn't exist. And so Dean's had a rough time. He had a campaign event where nobody showed up, but I'm just not going to discount your name being on the ballot. I just think that's a massive strategic advantage.
And he never made a case for like who he was or why he was running. He started out with like this Medicare for all, and he was for free college, and so you thought for a second that this guy who had been this centrist kind of lawmaker is now going to kind of run. He sees like room to Biden's left. That didn't really catch on because I think it just didn't map to him.
Right.
Like you see that closing ad. Where do you see Medicare for all and like free college fitting into that ad? Like I'm the most bipartisan guy out there, and so after that fell apart, he goes back to I'm the bipartisan guy, and then you're just Biden, except cogent, and at that point you're like, well, we already have Biden.
Well, and if cogent, it's not a terrible pitch. I mean, it's something.
Could work. Yeah. People would have to know who he is.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I think Biden, but cogent could be like a Newsom. But he's already understood to be like a threat. Like to get next to him, to get onto MSNBC requires you to have a little bit more kind of muscle behind you.
That's a good point. We also have some video of Marianne Williamson in one of her last campaign events that she posted yesterday. Let's take a listen to her closing pitch.
We have always been this kind of bipolar American mind. We have always been this inherent struggle. It's in the DNA of this country. Other generations rose up and they responded to the Gilded Age. They responded to it with the establishment of the labor movement. Other generations rose up, and they responded to institutionalized suppression of Black people and segregation in the American South. I'm running for president because it's our turn now.
All right, so we'll see how it goes. I mean, Marianne, Crystal said this yesterday, I think it was totally true. On Israel, seems to have just fumbled the ball because it's like, clearly that's an animating issue against Biden. Dean is pro-Israel from what we've seen in Crystal's interviews with him. So obviously that's just something that's just on the table. And now you've got these ceasefire votes, which may even draw away from Marianne. But by not making her name synonymous with that, I think she risked the only chance of cracking, let's say, 7 to 10%. Which, look, I mean, at the end of the day, that's just not going to cut it, period. It doesn't really matter. But, you know, if we're thinking about 7 to 10, it's a lot different. 7 to 10 is a lot different than 3, maybe 4. Like, we don't know where that's going to end up.
I think there was absolutely a path for a credible candidate to take a critical of Israel position over the last 3 months and put real pressure on Biden. Separately, this is another conversation we can have another time. It'd be fascinating if RFK were in that camp.
Yes, that's a good
That
point.
would be the parallels would be amazing to 1968 and LBJ and
I mean,
anti-war.
I think he would win. I don't think there's any
I think he might win,
the New Hampshire
but he's
Yeah.
like to the right of Biden on Israel, so it's just not
True.
in the world of possibility.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those where I think he would definitely win a New Hampshire primary just because, again, name ID on the ballot. That's just one. He was already doing well there anyway, so it's one of those where he decided to go independent. I get it. You know, he says the DNC was working against him and all that. He just didn't identify with the party anymore. But you cannot ever forget this. Getting on the ballot is really hard.
Right, yeah.
California does not want you on the ballot. We were looking yesterday. It takes like 100 and something thousand signatures. And look, the signature wars are nuts. It requires you to get like 30% more than you actually need because lawyers are going to challenge the validity. And even if you get totally legit ones, if you don't write legibly or if you don't write the proper address, there's all kinds of legal tricksters that the Republicans and the Democrats have used
really tough.
in these states. Yeah, I mean, Texas, same thing. Good luck getting on the ballot in some big states with 30, 40, 50 electoral votes like in these ones. And that's what you actually need to really compete, and actually to draw some stakes away. So look, keep that in mind as we continue to cover the RFK Jr. campaign. Right now, he's only still on the ballot in Utah. He's got some time, he's got a little bit of time, but some of the filing deadlines and all that stuff are coming up.
Yeah.
It takes a hell of a lot of organization. So final thoughts on the Democratic primary tonight? What do you think?
It's a rare primary where I really don't know what's going to happen because of all these different variables, the write-in, the absolute disgust with Biden, but the anemic performance of his opponents.
Yeah.
And so it just leaves so much room for people to have a bunch of difficult and like unpleasant decisions in front of them, trying to express something to a system that doesn't want to hear from them and doesn't give them a good way to actually express anything.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I said, I think Dean will overperform a bit, but in general, there's some tough work right now just for everybody going against him. And unfortunately, I think Biden's basically gotten away with rigging the primary. I think it's unfortunate. You basically
it's crazy.
You get to deem a state which by all means is totally in the tank for you with the most machine politics, arguably in the whole country, whenever it comes to a primary. And it's a red state. Like, both of these first primaries should obviously be in actual swing states. I've always thought Michigan was a great pick, something genuinely 50-50 industrial, working class. Or you could go the other way. You could say Super Tuesday should go first and everybody should be forced to compete national. But people just basically rigging things for themselves. It's not right. And, prior to Biden, nobody even dared to try. But he had the opportunity, he decided to pick it. And I've said here before,
it's wild.
If you can go into this too, Obama will never happen again. That type of scenario, it will never happen. The insurgent cannot win if South Carolina is going to be number one. It's going to be incredibly difficult if you got the establishment there.
It'd be very hard, but it's not completely impossible. But the other thing that's changing is that these races are now so national. Like, even back in 2007, when Obama is running in Iowa, he could be a lot more popular in Iowa than he could be nationally.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, for the most part, your national polls have a gravitational pull on your regional and local polls. That the moments where you're going to have somebody who's doing extremely well in a state but not doing well nationally are basically gone.
Yeah.
Because we are now a national culture and a national media environment, because we're all in the same slightly tweaked feeds from TikTok, Twitter, and everybody else.
Yeah.
And so that's the other reason that you're not going to have somebody that can kind of come from nowhere, because you have to have and the only reason that Obama got the national numbers that he did was by winning Iowa.
Exactly.
Right. That showed that he could win, and so then other people were like, "Oh, if he can win, then I'm with him." But if you don't have that chicken. If you don't have that egg, you can't get the chicken.
Very, very, very true.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.